this Zoom, and we're gonna start and try to also stream it live on Facebook for the people who didn't have a chance to connect via Zoom. Hopefully it's gonna work. Although it looks like it's gonna be on my personal account, I think it's better than nothing. Okay, so welcome everyone. Okay, today is the day. Today we are celebrating Yennayer, the Amazigh New Year. So we, as our organization this year, we wanted to do it differently. We wanted to do it via Zoom, and we wanted to be educational, because as we know, we all know our history, but do we know enough? So it's always good to refresh memories and learn new things. And our choice of our guest and a guest speaker today is Mr. Uqamoum Nasser. He is Algerian Amazigh originally, and he is a specialist in Tamazight language, a researcher as well. So he's very humble. So his description he gave me, I think he deserves a longer description, and you're gonna see it through the presentation today. He has a lot of things to teach us, and we're gonna learn all together a lot of interesting things about the Amazigh and the history and culture, and specifically we're gonna learn why do we celebrate Yennayer. And so I'm going to introduce Mr. Uqamoum Nasser. He's an academic. He enjoys exploring the hidden facets of the Amazigh language, grammar, syntax, and literature. He taught Amazigh grammar and writing to teenagers and adults for over 14 years. He is also an author of 3 novels in Kabyle and French. Welcome, Mr. Uqamoum Nasser, and you can start your presentation, and thanks for accepting our invitation today.
First of all, thank you very much for you invite me, and it's the first time I do it in English because I used to speak only in French or Amazigh, and I'm glad. I'm very pleased to give you my small knowledge in order to make people thinking by themselves and to make their research and to carry on researching and asking questions and asking around us, parents, friends, teachers, and even in libraries. So we have to go and get our knowledge. I will start to share this presentation, and tell me just if it's okay for you all. Do you see it?
Yes, yeah, it's okay. Shared. Thank you.
So at the first time, I have to tell you, Asgos, Happy New Year.
Thank you,
1975. And this is the cover of my presentation. Like you see on the top, there is a calendar, season calendar in Amazigh, Tigris, Tafsu, Thamwan, Iwilan. This is the small calendar that the new is done in Libya, in Amazigh, with Amazigh of Libya, and there is circles inside of months and some of the activities that they do in their fields. On the corner on the left in the bottom, this is the carpet. I think it's from Ouled Nail, and with all the symbols on the top, and they are similar even in Libya, even in Kabylia, even in Louras, even in Warsanis or Morocco. All these Amazigh symbols are on the carpets, on the clays, on the dishes, and even some of our old parents with we call it الوشام, on their face or their hands, on their arms, and even on the leg. So it's tattoo. On the right side, this is what we call Agadir. It looks like a bank of now. Before, a long time ago, there was no banks, and the people have to pay someone to watch a construction like this one, in which each family has their own chamber or room, where they keep their jewelries, their vegetables, wheats, and all the important things that they have, and they don't want to keep it at home. And this is it calls Agadir. And if some one of you have seen, I'm sure that you have seen it, the film of Star Wars, in some scenes, some pictures, there is this kind of building, and they filmed that part in Jeddah, in Tunisia. And this is an introduction for all what we have. And I want to tell you that we are proud of having this in all through North Africa, from the west of Egypt until the Canarian Islands. I start my presentation. First, my introduction is to show our people that any people in this world have their calendar. Administrative one, the one that we know, is we have just make a feast of New Year last week, and it's 2025 since Jesus Christ. So this is an administrative calendar that is used all through the world, and it's conventional. Through the history, I found these two objects. They are tablets of clay, table d'argile, in Sumerian. So it's in north of Iraq and Iraq now. And the Sumerian reported some of their movements or their observation about the sun, about the stars, about the moon, and they put it on the tablets just to show people that we will observe this event next year and all the years after. And the round one is from 33 centuries before Christ. That means it's almost more than 5,000 years now. This calendar is the Persian one from Iran, and all the months on the top are the moon months, not sunny one, not solar. It's moon, lunar. This Indian one, with 4 doors, maybe to symbolize or to make the entrance of each season, the Indians. This is, I'm sure that you have seen it before. It's a Chinese calendar. Instead of being a yearly calendar, it's a 12 years cycle. And each year is symbolized with an animal. And we're getting on the year of the snake in maybe at the end of January or at the middle of February. These 3 are from Latin America, is Maya, Aztec, and I forgot the other one. And they have also have their observation and their calendars based on sun or moon movement and evolution. This one is from Africa, is called the Yoruba calendar, and it's based on 12 months, but each month is 7 weeks, not 7 days a week, but 4 days a week. And it's around Nigeria and Benin. It's used there. This is a calendar of the world, some of them that we can be referenced. That means that the human were observing the sky and the nature just to follow and forecast events and seasons.
Samia just reminded you, for the one you forgot, it was the Incas calendar.
Pardon?
Samia said it was the Incas calendar.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. And for the regions too, this is an Orthodox calendar. It's like similar than Julian, that the one Gregorian that we have now. And in the religion, they use it with all their icons, with their biblical person in the calendar. This one is the Catholic one. They are similar, and it's related to the religion event and or their feasts. This one is a Buddhist calendar. It's a mixture of a solar and lunar calendar. This one is from Tibet, and it's based on the, I think, or solar too. And this one, you know it, all of you. This is a Muslim calendar, which is based on the moon evolution. That's why we have Ramadan. Each year it goes, in the next year it will come about 1 week, 10 days backward. And why do we need calendars? The first thing is to continue people's memory, traditions, and events. If we have an event last year or a century before, and people of now want to memory, to make to recall that event or that tradition, so they have to use calendar to know exactly on which day do we have to Eid, where we have Ramadan, or do we have 1st of November or other days, birthday too. Second is to organize the all people activities, religious, administrative, or work. Imagine if we don't have calendars, how can we know that our children will go to school and we have to work, or we take vacation, or to make any feast? We cannot. So we have this. We need this organization to find and to make an order in our activities. To recall the founding myth and legends. We have legends, and people, we cannot verify some legends, but we can say that these legends and myths are part of our people, part of our building, the building people and the imagination. And to educate and schedule generation of future. Imagine our children or the generation for the future. We will not find anything about their past, but our past. How can they feel? I'm sure that they can feel upset. And sometimes our children will say, I don't know nothing about my grandparents. How was your grandparents? All these are education, organization, and continue our history. These two calendars are the picture of what happens in the world. If we come to Algeria, and you are seeing here, you watch a calendar, a kind of calendar, which is on a clay dish. And the lady who did this, who painted the dish, made, I will show it to you in black and white. Here is, you see, and the lady, usually the ladies paint clay dishes, has divided all the dish in 5 parts. And you see, there's a snack on the border, and inside we have snack getting into middle and another snack leaving. And if we can check all around the natural around us, we'll find that the snakes, we can see snakes after the spring. At the end of the spring, we start to see the snakes on the ground or in the forest and in our fields. And when we get off, it's at the end of autumn. And I suppose too that each part is symbolizing or references to a part of a year. That's why we have this, and this one between the two snakes should be the winter. And don't ask me what the symbols are missing or signifying. I don't know. I'm not sure. There is a book of, I think it's Jean Bernard Moreau. It's in French, and you can find it on the internet. He has explained all these symbols and what he could find or from his research and asking ladies doing all these paintings. This is just to give you a picture of a calendar done on a dish. My presentation is divided in three parts. First part is how can we explain all the traditions and the carnival when we do Yennayer. Second part is history, what history says about Amazigh people. And the third one is the linguistic side. And on these three perspectives, most of the time they are not linked. The oldest part should be, I'm not sure, we have to make researchers, and our researchers have to go carry on to look after all the sites and all the artifacts to find the truth or what seems the truth in anthropology or archaeology. And the oldest should be the calendar, the traditions, the calendar of agrarian calendar that we can see later, and the other events just came after. That's why I used to say there is no link until now between these, because sometimes the traditions are here before they become official. The 1st November was the 1st of November, was the start of the war, the revolution, but it has been institutionalized or official after the independence, not before. That's why I used to say that the agrarian, the activities in the fields should be far before the unofficial calendar. So for the linguistic side, Romans have built their calendar in the 8th century before Christ. And they divided the year in 10 months. In this period, in the 8th century, was founded the city of Rome by Romulus and Remus. And they have their justice, their administration, they have organized their activities, and they needed to have a calendar to follow all these administrative activities and the religions and everything. So they started, the first month should be in March, after the winter, and the first month is in honor of Roman god of war, Mars. Aprilis is Aphrodite, it's a Greek goddess of love and beauty. Maius is Maya, Roman goddess of growth. And Junius is Junon is a Roman goddess of the fertility and marriages. So these 4 months have been dedicated or chosen in honor of a god or goddesses. After after Maius, Junius, they have started with numbers. Quintilis is from Quintus, which is the 5th in Latin. language. Sextilis is sextius, sixth in Latin. September is from septem, means seventh in Latin. October, 8th. November, 10th, 9th. And December is 10th month. They don't give names of God or any known person, so they gave numbers. I'm sure that this is the first who, the Romans are the first who did a table of 10 months. And I'm sure that they took it from Greeks or from all the people around Mediterranean. Because the Greek have their calendars through the history. Otherwise, how come Herodot has written his books, or how they give courses, how they develop their philosophia, or all things. So around the Romans, I'm sure that people have organized themselves their ways. But the Roman came and they made a table of the first calendar, official calendar. With the time, they found that, you remember, they start with spring in March, and they finish in December, before winter, at the end of autumn. That means there's missing a part, about 3 months in the year. Why do they have to miss this? Because there is no activity in winter, no war, no commerce, no, especially nothing special to make to mark that period. So the Pompilius, he was a king or an emperor of Rome in the 5th century, has made an order to add months to this period, black period or winter period. So the first month, he gave it to Honorius in honor of Janus, who is the Roman god of transition. That means they have finished with December 2 centuries ago, and they are getting to new season or new time or new period. That's why Janus is the god with two faces. One face to the past, one faces the coming year, the new year, if you want. The second month, they give it in honor of February, who is the god of death and purification. In February, everything is dead, and it's the beginning of life, if you want to prepare, to prepare the spring, or to go forward to spring, to March. These are 12 months. But at each 8 years, from the 5th century before Christ, they noticed that each 8 months, 8 years, there is about 20 or 22, 23, 24 sometimes days missing after the February, and spring is not coming, it's not for tomorrow, This period, each 8 years, each cycle of 8 years, there is missing a month. So what they do, they added a month, which is called Mercedius, and they added between February and March 2 or 3 days each month. And they called it Mercedonius. It's an intercalary month between the old month, February, and the new one in March. What they do is this: they pay their soldiers in these 3 or 4 days between the 2 months, and they call it Mercedonius because the word which is have the same origin in French is mercenaire. Mercenaire is a soldier, and in Rome the soldiers are paid yearly and not monthly or weekly. And that's why they dedicated to it to pay the soldiers in these 3 4 days. From now, they almost have the complete year. But in the last century before Christ, in the 44 before Christ, Caesar Julius has gave, or the people around, or the Senate, gave the name of Caesar Julius to the 5th month. That means the Quintilis become July, Julius, which is July now. And in the 8th before Christ, they added, they gave the name of August, who is another emperor, to the 6th month, which we have now called August or Ut. So like this, until the 1st century, we have a complete names of the year, and the days are almost counted. Because the difference between the last year and the first year, between February and March, they give 3 or 4 days to clear all the remaining, or the residue of the last year, and they start a new year in March. It's solar year. So with the Greeks, I'm sure, like I said before, I'm sure that any people in this world have their calendar, and the Greek is not an exception. So they have theirs, but they started their calendar on copying on Roman one, because it became universal. Like the Gregorian that we have now, it's universal. So I think it's that in that time in the at the first centuries, the Greek didn't have anything. They didn't want to invent or to create another calendar, and they copy it. They copy the names of the months from the Romans. So, like we say, if you read Greek, you can read it. Otherwise, I read it in Latin. So, Janarius, it's the same thing than Janarius. Februarius, Martius, Aprilius, Maius, Junius, and so on. They are similar. And I'm sure, like I said, they have their calendars before, and they copy it just to make it universal. And it's conventional between all peoples. And these 2 first old languages in Mediterranean, Greek and Roman and Latin. If we check on the now languages, the modern languages like French, Spanish, English, and British, and the German, they look the same too. They didn't. They have only copied these names and adapt them to their languages. For the French, janvier, février, mars, avril, mai, juin, juillet, enero, febrero, marzo, april, mayo. In German, Dutch, Januar, Februar, März, April, May, Juni, January, February, March. So we cannot, make war on the names. They are similar. And I can say one thing, maybe these names, they were before in the other languages. Maybe the Greek, the Roman took the names from the Roman, from the Greek, or from the other languages like the Etrusc or the Amazigh in North Africa, or all around the Mediterranean. I can remind you one thing. Herodot wrote in his books that they took the name of Poseidon from the Libyan, who are Berbers. They speak the same Berber than us, the same grammar, the same linguistics. And they say that the Athena too, it took it from the Amazigh people. And the Greek, the women Greek, he said that he took them from the Amazigh woman in Libya. And in Libya, until now, they speak Amazigh too. So I'm not excluding that some names should be copied by the Romans from them, but the Romans, they were the first to put a table. I can ask you one question. Who invented the name of radar, scanner, television, radio? We don't ask. I'm sure that there is someone who, in this world, who invented it the first. But we don't forget, and any languages, any people took it and adapted to in his language. It's become universal. And for importance, for our what our concern is the Amazigh words. You see, with the months, we have the same schedule of the months, the same order. We have Yennayer or Yennar, or Nair, Furar, Magras, Yibrir, Mayo, Namago, Yunion, Julius, Rosh, Stambar, Tovar, November, Number, Navujambar. They maybe the first name was for like the hypothesis, the theory says Yennayer comes from the word, two words, Yen, which means one in Amazigh, and Ayer, it's a month, the first month. Maybe the Roman took it from the Amazigh people, from our language, and we don't know, but they wrote it the first. Or maybe there is similarities, and we don't know. Just we give it the same name, but we were the first. I say we and the Romans and the Greek, we were the first to have that word in common. So if I ask my question, ask you a question, you see the similarities between these names and these ones and these ones. Why is there this resemblance? My answer, and it's from the any linguistic teacher or researcher will say this. In fact, instead of going to asking people, okay, you were the first to have this word, or we were the first to have this word, and we cannot demonstrate that or to prove that, because if someone has a word, has invented the word, but someone else was the first to write it, the history will count the word for the one who was writing somewhere the first, and not someone who invented it. That's the theoretical perspective says in linguistics. So the month's name are Mediterranean common heritage due to the Roman power. And this is my conclusion. I cannot say that it was only Amazigh or only Roman or Greek or Etrusc or other old people, but it's a common on all the Mediterranean, and now it comes universal, even in the Scotland, in all Europe, in all Africa, in all Asia. This is a side of linguistic that I want to explain to our people. On this perspective, by this perspective, we are proud of being a part of this world Mediterranean and sharing all this calendar. And we're not sharing only calendar, we are sharing traditions and some history, some legends, some mythological events. If you read Homer, Ulysse, I read it in French, and it's full of some traditions which are common between the Homer, the Greek, and the Amazigh people, and things that we have. I have lived in my area with my parents, with my neighbors. The second part is traditions. And I said below that the calendar and the traditions may be not connected, but I'm sure that the traditions were before, were practiced at before to have a table of calendar or to have a month schedule. The first thing I will speak about the agrarian calendar, which is important for our North Africa. Second part is Yennayer supper. It's important today. This supper today, we have to make our supper to feast this event. And the carnival of Eid, that's an example of carnival, which is practiced in the west of Algeria, in Beni Suef. So the agrarian calendar, it's linked to, connected to the agricultural activities. It's based on the yearly observation of the nature. So they know when to put wheat in the ground and when to make all the activities linked to the field. The Amazigh people have fixed their calendar in order to organize their activities, field activities especially, and such as planting, preparing the field, cutting or grafting the branches, and using fertilizers, and so on. All the activities that they do through the year, they put it in a table which is called agrarian calendar. It's a solar one with almost 365 days and divided in weeks or sometimes multiple of weeks. And sometimes we can find only one day. Like Yennayer, the supper of Yennayer is only one supper, one night, is 2 nights. And here from the 1st February to the 3rd, we have Al-Azla. There's an activity in these 3 days. Otherwise, we can find some days like that, or 2-3 weeks together to have one activity. In spring, the weeks are shorter and the activities are closer. But in summer, the activities are extended in 2 or 3 weeks. So this is a kind of calendar based on weeks and based on the activity fields in our area in Kabylia. This one, and thanks to Jamaldin Mishhab, he did the same thing, even the table, the schedule like first table, or this disk. He reported, he gathered all the, what he found in Ul Habib's books, manuscripts, and he gathered them here. They are similar. We have the months in the middle, the seasons in the middle. After that, the months and the weeks and all the activities that they do and how long they are all these weeks and activities, what activity they do in that week, on that day. The Amazigh consider the 1st Yennayer as a first day. 1st Yennayer is tomorrow, 12th of January, 12th of Gregorian calendar. The 2025 is a universal calendar, is Gregorian one, because that had been corrected and by Gregorian in the 3rd century. In the 16th century by the Gregoire 13th. And the 1st Yennayer is the day where the daylight starts to increase. And if before Yennayer, in the winter, in December, the nights are longer than the daylights. So in this day of Yennayer, the duration are equal, and the daylight start to increase. So it's about the 2nd week. Here we are in the 2nd week. We are the 11th. So tomorrow, 12th. The universal day equivalence is 12th January. In Algeria, some areas they feast the 12th or the 13th or the 14th, depending on the activities, and sometimes they put for the feast 3 days, from the 12th till the 14th. In the Middle Ages, there is Ali ibn Ahmed ibn Muhammad al-Sharqi. in the 6th century, from Sfax, Tunisia, has reported a similar calendar than the first one that we saw, and he made a table or a desk with all the months. If you read Arabic, you will find here Yennayer, Forar, Maris, April, and so on, Mayo, Yulio. The same thing on the other picture. And all the activities that we can have or they can do in that area. So Neyer's facts, he reported all these activities that they do on this table. In Andalusia, the south of Spain, the Yennayer Yennayer's feast is reported by Ibn Quzman. Quzman is a poet of the poet. You know, he's called Sheikh al-Zajjalin. He's the poet of the poet. You know, the erudite that is the top of the poets in that time in the 12th century. And I saw, if you go to the internet, you will find these references. If you read French, I think there's also in French or in Arabic books for this. And he reported in the Middle Ages that we are feasting this, and they were proud of feasting Yennayer. Okay, I will tell you why. Okay, what the purpose of this. We have saying in Kabyle, أذفكني بركانا أذكشمني ملالا. Yennayer, like I said, that the equality between the daylight and the night the night, the duration of daylight. This saying, أذفكني بركانا أذكشمني ملالا, if I can translate it, we will end with the black nights, and we will start with the lightened days. This is the limit of starting, or the beginning of Yennayer. And it references to the daylight equality with the darkness during 24 hours. The first day of Yennayer is called, depending on the area, and I know between you, they heard it many times. They call it Yennayer, Yinnar, Tabut Nusgwes, Imensin Yennayer, Asen Fir'aun, say it should be around Ores, Khanshla, Timsunin. Aylad, at the west of Algeria, in Tlemcen, Sibdu, and in that area. And even Yennayer is the night of Yennayer, the night of tomorrow. And I have the translations in the bottom. Ibn Yennayer, this is a Yennayer supper. What we do a week before Yennayer, before today, and I think that most of you seen it around you or saw it or did it themselves. A week before Yennayer, a severe cleaning of all the house, the yard, and the washing all the washing and painting walls too, and they're big cleaning. A week or 2 weeks before Yennayer. Yennayer supper is components are usually couscous or berkokus, which is a dough pearls, chicken, and some salty dry meat. Because any family have this. It's not a camel or a big cow or an exotic animal. So every house has their chicken, has their salted meat, and the couscous or berkokus. All they have it. So it's à la portée de tout le monde. Anyone can do this supper. And 7 dry vegetables, because in winter we don't have green vegetables. Instead of now, at least now we have it. We can go to groceries to find them. But centuries before, we don't have this kind of vegetables in winter. So that's why they use the dry vegetables like beans, all the beans, chickpeas, peas, lentils. They they put seven. Why? It's a magic, like the feast of marriage of 7 days and 7 nights, and 7 days a week. All these are mystic, and it should be somewhere fortunate days or the fortunate number. How do we feast? And you can do it tonight if you want. All members of the family eat in the same big dish. This supper of Yennayer, this couscous with chicken with 7 vegetables, all in the same big dish, and all the family members spoon put. Even if someone used to be with us and for any reason he is not tonight with us, we can put by spirit we'll put his spoon just to have him or have her with us to share this supper. Such as a daughter which has been married, or children, or children if they are away for study or for work or something, for any reason. So we have to put their spoons to fill them that they are sharing our supper. First haircut of the child of less than a year, because in 1 year the child should have at least made this feast, attended this feast. So the occasion, it's the occasion to cut a little bit of his hair. And the last children, the smallest one, child or girl, boy or girl, it put in the middle of the big dish, and we will throw on it, pouring on his head some dry figs, nuts, prunes, almonds, candies, biscuits, maybe anything dry. And there is a link here of a special event done in Warsnis. I think it should be in Tipaza or Cherchel. And these are pictures with a small boy here, and his mom is throwing on his head some nuts, and even here. And to give improved supper to their animals. If we have a cat, if we have a cow or goats or any animal living with us, so in that night we have to improve their supper. Their supper with dry figs, with something special than that you used to eat at the supper. And I can tell you one thing. In some areas, I remember from our grandparents, in that day, they send a small child or small children, a small girl, to tell the cow in his ear that don't forget, tomorrow's Yennayer and the frozen nights are finished. You know this small theater, so it looks like a tragedy, theatral. Send a small child to tell the cow that tomorrow it's feast and tomorrow will be the good day. So it will be better and the days will be longer.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you can later put that YouTube link into the chat, that everyone will have a chance to check it out after the.
Okay, I will do it later. Okay.
Thank you.
Live outside. They leave, so it's finished. How they feast in our areas. Ask your grandparents, and they will tell you in any area, in the west, in the south, in the north, in any area in Algeria, and also outside. This morning I heard something from Libya. They do the same thing. This thing. So they put some wheat or some couscous, some molina, outside the house, to whom? To the ants and to the birds. So they share this Yennayer with the nature, with the animals, with all the members of the family, and they respect all these steps, if you want. Now we are in the carnival perspective. Carnival perspective, I gave an example of Iraq, and they do the same thing in Kabylia, in Morocco. So it's small carnival, and some areas they call it sheikh because of old person, Amghar, Hamar al-Karmos, Amghar al-Shkouf in Kabylia, or Rougelman, Abu Gulman in Morocco. The person who wears the sheep or the animal leather. And for this example of Ayrad in Tlemcen, in Beni Snus, Ayrad is an exception, is carnival. Ayrad is carnival. Ayrad, it means a lion, okay? And the lion of Yennayer is just a small carnival celebrated with the Yennayer's supper. And the children, what they do, they run from door to door asking nuts, bread, candies, dry fruits, biscuits, and everything, except not except the liquids. So no coffee, milk, and the drink. So it should be only dry things that they can carry and share. And the carnival is to wear the sheepskin costumes and other accessories. It looks like Halloween in October. And if you go to, I'll show you some pictures here. You see, here is the some examples of these sheepskins which they wear during the night or during the day, and making a feast of this. In the middle, this picture in the middle, this looks like a lion. Ayrad is a lion. As I understood it, is a lion running after people all through the streets in the village. This happened in 2015. Since 2015, the UNESCO has officialized Yennayer-Amazigh New Year as a universal and tangible heritage, héritage immatériel universel. As couscous, as tradition, an ancestral tradition, and all as till now, the writing or the characters of Amazigh languages, Amazigh alphabet, and also the couscous. And thank you for the crop or the people who made this request to UNESCO, and they put the couscous and Tifina alphabet and this new year as a common heritage, universal heritage that we are proud of. Agrarian calendar, Yennayer supper, carnivals of Ayrad, and all the activities that I have forgotten or I don't know, or maybe I don't have time to put them all in my presentation, are effectively shared in all the region of North Africa. If we go to Morocco or Tunisia or Libya, even in Egypt, the west of Egypt, in Siwa, we will find that they feast Yennayer with this kind of perspectives, the supper and sometimes the carnival and their agrarian calendar. And like I told before, this calendar, agrarian calendar, and the carnivals, maybe I'm waiting for the researchers to explain us or to be sure of to attest that this calendar, agrarian and traditions, should be before the calendar itself of Yennayer for our Mars, because the activities, after that, they have to have activities then to make them in the schedule. Now for the history perspective, the title is Shoshank first. we are looking, some of us, some of people, in any people in the world, they always look history, ask history about the first event that makes us proud of, that we can share as an origin, an event that who cannot be denied, for example. So in any country, any people have the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Persian, the Sumerian have their first event that marks or built the personality of the people. So in history, we have found Shushan first. In Egypt, his reign was from 943 until 922 before Christ. In the 10th century, he was an Egyptian pharaoh, but Amazigh origin. He was from Libya, not from he didn't want from Libya to be a pharaoh. So he grew, his grandparents grow in the in Egypt, because he was before he becomes a pharaoh, he was a commandant of soldiers. So if he is a commandant, that means there is a lot of sub-commandant under him. His grandfather, he was a priest in Amon's temple. If we have a priest in a temple, that means a sub-priest should be many in that from the same origin, and they are older, and they have grown in Egypt. So his reign, he started the 22nd dynasty family, pharaoh family in Egypt, and he was the first Amazigh who enters the reign of pharaohs. And he is from Mshawish in Libya, because many tribes were in Amazigh tribes were in Egypt, not only them, and even the black ones from Sudan, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, they called the Kushis. They were in Egypt too, but he was the first to be pharaoh, but his origin is Amazigh. And remember, I ask you to remember this 950. Shushan first, here in this picture, he's giving honor to Amun, to the priest of Amun, of the temple of Amun, like it's written here. I'm not specialist of hieroglyph characters, but I went to put my research. This first cartridge, it's written on the top, these flowers or plants are Ush. Second one is Ush. This zigzag, it's an N, and this triangle or a fruit, it's a Qa. So in this cartridge, we can read the name of Shishanq. And on the top, it's Amun. That means we have the Amun on the top as the Amun-Ra, as the god. After that, we have a pharaoh who is called Shashanq, and they do the same thing. All the pharaohs, they put the Amun-Ra on the top, and their names as a representant or as a powerful person under the Amun-Ra. And he's here giving honor to the priest of the temple, which is Amun. The same cartridge here is in bigger near Shashanq. Before him, there is Shashanq's son, who called Yuput. In the Old Testament, Shashanq is commercially identified with the Egyptian king Shishak. and referred in this Bible, in the Bible of the Old Testament, in the book of Kings and the Chronicles, with these references. And I gave here some extracts of what they wrote about Shishaq in the Old Testament, and we don't have to forget. There's one thing in the during the reign of Shishaq, there was Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam. Solomon's prophet was in the same period than Shishaq, and Shishaq went to Jerusalem after the death of Solomon. Why? Because Yeroboam, the son of Solomon, was spreading all his father's treasuries and faith and everything. So that's why it has been called by a small Sina, if we can say that. Shishaq has been called to help the Jerusalem, or to protect the treasure, Solomon's treasury. That's what the searchers said. And in Quran, the same history, in the same history has been reported, but with no names. In Surah Al-Isra, ayah 3 through 7, they spoke about someone who came after Salman alayhi salam, and he was spreading the treasury, and you can say he I think there's no translation in English. Sorry for that. And you can find it. That is same story. And the specialist of Islam from Bijaya, called Bu'alam Juhari, I will give the reference at the end. He spoke about this event, and these events are connected, and they are speaking about the same event. So Shishaq is in the history, and he is a Berber, he's Amazigh, and he's from the west of Egypt, and we are proud of. I am proud about someone who did this, and he was the person who stated his name, or graved his name with gold in the history of the world, and especially with religion, and a big civilization of Egypt too. And the thing that I can tell you, that I'm sure that before Shishaq there was Amazigh people living and growing with other people, connecting with others, and sharing things. But this is the event which is graved or in the walls, or can be verified. Can we check and everything? And if he was the first pharaoh, Amazigh pharaoh, who came to Egypt at 943 to 922 before Christ, that means he was commandant 10 years or 4 years or 20 years before this date. So that's why, to make the calculation easier, they put 950. Because at that time, it's logical that he was a commandant of something. He was mature. He was ready to make place, to take place in the world of Egypt at that time. So we go through now the three perspectives: traditions and carnival, which can be, I'm sure that they are before the calendar, before the Shishaq event. And we went through the history. We are proud of these two. And the linguistics explains some similarities and some answers of all of you. Why do we have these names similar now? And why they were not different since the beginning. Universal become a universal. Like I say to the people now, people didn't ask, didn't check to find the name for radar, to scanner, television, radio, because it's here. So they have to carry on with civilization, and they took the name and they adopted in their language. So I think they did the same thing for the month names, and that doesn't exclude that these names of months may be common heritage between all the peoples of Mediterranean before the calendar, the Roman calendar. So, as a note, I say that the Amazigh traditions, agriculture, Yennayer supper, or carnivals, this is only experience of people that we have to experience, to be proud of this nature, to be observer, and to live our time, and to live it with our children so they can take it themselves, and they keep it, or they can live it. Because some traditions they have been forgotten, and they disappear with the time. And the other thing, and any event in the history, any event wrought or imagined, it's a power of the people. If we ask why Shoshenq is Amazigh, and we are talking about him and all the family, Shoshenq first, I think there are Shoshenq first, two, second, third, fourth, and the fifth. And between them, there are other names of their children too. Because we are proud of him, because it's written somewhere, and he's talking about us, but our ancestors, and this power, and imagine, and even the mythology, and the legends are the power of the people too. How we can imagine that the Yennayer is with. For example, the last day of January of Yennayer is called Amardil. It looks like February gave the day to January because of one legend which says that at the first February, at the end of Yennayer, the first Forar, an old lady said to Yennayer, you are finished, and there was no big snow, big frozen nights, days, and everything. So Yennayer asked February to borrow him a day, just to correct the lady. And that day, February gave him a day, and that day there was a big frozen day. There was a big frozen day, and there was a snow, and the lady died with her goats because of what she did. She said to Yennayer. That's why we call it in Kabyle Amardil, the given day to Yennayer. This is just a legend. I'm sure that it's from the imagination and the power of our ancestors, and we must be proud of this thing. So the big question is, why do we have tonight reached the 2,975? First of all, we have not started, our people, Amazigh people, didn't start to account years since the year 1. Never. But with the fact that we are proud of what Shoshenq did in Egypt as a pharaoh, or what his family, 22nd dynasty, did in Egypt, so we are proud, and we have to mark that day. And they have started this day to count the years in 1890, just after the Amazigh Spring in the University of Tizi Ouzou in Algeria. So, who did this? It has been proposed, suggested by Amr Nagadi. He's a son of Marwana in Batna at the east of Algeria. He was born in 43 and he died in 2008. He drawn the first Amazigh calendar, this one, with 2,930. And he was looking in all the books through the history, something to anchor, to find, to accrocher uh, our history, at a big event. So in all the events, we can he may be started. He could have started by example, since the independence, since the Emir Abdel Qadir, or after the big event in Bijaya, because it was a big university in the Middle Ages, or maybe with Saint Augustine, or maybe before that. We can start anywhere. But the oldest event that we are proud of, he chose the Sheshnak getting Pharaoh. And it's based on, for this year we have 2025, since the year zero, or year one, we added 950 years, just to make calculations easier. Instead of having 943, 42, 27 years, we have 950. And 10 centuries before Christ is too far, and 9 centuries is also far. We're losing some events, even the calculation will be easier. So we did choose 9, the medium year, which is 950, added to the 25, we have 2,975. Next year, 26 plus 950 years, we will reach 2,976, and in 2027 we will reach 2,977. This is a small history or speech of our linked events to Yennayer. And like I said, we didn't start Yennayer in 950 years before Christ. Yennayer is older than this. Is older. In Kabylia we say Mesnet Dunith, the mother of the life, the mother of this world. We were here in North Africa. So I'm sure that the seasons started with people at the beginning, and after the people started to be organized and to copy on the left, on the right, other peoples, to find something that they can share. Why do we have, that's my question to you, why do we have to celebrate Yennayer? The first answer is, like I said it at the beginning, is to continue Amazigh memories. We are responsible to share with our children, with the coming generation, all these facts, books, traditions, carnivals, language, all our life with them, to continue, because we took them from our parents and grandparents, and we have this responsibility to share them, to pass them to the next generations. To teach Amazigh traditions and events. Some of us, when I ask some people from the other areas in Algeria, I usually learn from them some difference in some events, how they do couscous, why they do berkoukas, why they do that carnival and not another one. So these all traditions should be teaching to teach to the other generation, to other people too. Now in North America, in Europe, all they know couscous, and the couscous is North African meal. Couscous was before pasta, macaroni, spaghetti, and all the kinds of this. Why? Because our ancestors, they were producing wheat. Our area of 6 million kilometers square was the Roman called it le grenier de Rome. It's like a backstore of Rome. Another thing, to show the world our myths and legends. Well, our ancestors were not here just eating and sleeping and dying. No, they were participating. They were organizing their activities and their approach to the nature, to God, to the ecology, to the sea, to the legends. They are interacting. Reacting to other people too. They taking and they giving. They exchanging traditions and events. To promote local economy. When we do Yennayer, that means we have to buy wheat, we have to buy vegetables, we have to organize there's money pocket to pocket. So it's economical promotion. To involve our responsibility to continue Amazon memories is to involve our children in celebrating. They have to take part of this. And to share meals, joy and pleasure. This is the most important. We have to share joy, meals, and pleasure. That's why we have to eat in the same big dish. That's why we have to call people to eat with us. And even they are not present, we put their spoon. And the most thing is for our teenagers, they will, I'm sure that will listen and see this video, is to feel proud, to belong to their ethnicity, to their community, to their country. Why do we eat couscous different from pizza, from other meals? Because we have to be proud of it. It's part of us. So we have to be proud. They like their names. Why do I'm sure that the teenagers have been asked the question why your name is Muhammad, is Masinissa, why your country your name is not the same than Jean Paul and Stephen. They have to we have to give them answers, and when we give them the answers, it should be a package of names, traditions, and meals, and all these parts. We are this responsibility to give them, just to make them proud of. These are some books that you can find in libraries or some in the internet. And some people who did some research, we have Jamal Lasab, Boualam Jouahri, I spoke about Shashnaq in Quran, Haj Hanna Duwaq, he spoke about Yennayer, he's a sweet guy. Specialist of philosophy and Islam. I'm recommending him to see or to listen to him. We have Rashid Bsir. He wrote many books, and many videos are in YouTube, and some other links here to share and to go. I'm encouraging you to go and research by yourself to find other answers. I know I didn't give everything, and you must find in your area something that it's not included in this presentation. At the end, thank you all for being with me, and thank you for Hawa for their invitation. Sabrina?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure hearing you and learning from you. I personally, I found it like amazing, and I'm Berber myself, and I found out that I was ignorant, and the good thing that we can learn every day. I think I'm gonna be a little bit like selfish. I wanted to give the opportunity to people to ask questions. Of course, I felt like I'm gonna ask the last, but I'm gonna start first because I'm so eager and excited to hear your opinion about what I think. It's just a question that has been in my mind for so long. So you mentioned something very important when you said Amazigh, like people should are the center of the world, like they existed for so long. So I'm gonna give you a challenging question. Like if you read about the Latin American history and ancestry, like Mayans and Aztecs, they claim also they've been around for so long. So are there really any like comparative studies that to combine the two or compare and see the similarities and differences? I would, I mean, geographically, they are in two different parts of the world, and supposedly the American continent was discovered like in the, 15th century by, Europeans, but we can see like lots of similarities in many like art works and it's like it has been said, and I'm sure there are studies about that. My question to you, because you're a researcher in the like Amazigh matter, are there any like comparative studies, or it's still like something to explore, or for people who are interested to make researchers? And I'm just asking you, is this like worth to be done, or was it done before? Sorry, it's a lengthy question.
Thank you for this question. I'm not, I know, I don't seem knowing everything, but I have something that I know. Um, uh, in Algeria, especially, and Morocco, there is University of Amazigh literature activities, anthropology, history, and everything. And I'm sure that they're searching in traditions and the similarities with other the comparison, with other people, and they can contact them if anyone is interested by researching. They can contact the University of Tizi Ouzou, of Bouira, of Batna. Now we have one in Tamraset. There is in Tlemcen too. Tlemcen, there is a patrimonial institute. So I'm sure that we have anthropologists, archaeologists, and linguistic person teachers who are looking after that. And this University of Amazigh Fact started in 1994. That means we are now almost 30 years, and I'm sure that there are people continuing, carrying on their research. Maybe they are not put in public, but there is some teachers who are specialists in these facts of Amazigh people.
Thank you so
I
much.
hope that I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of guided me, and yeah, I'm sure if we dig deeper, we will. And it's also a call from me for people who are interested in like history and anthropology, archaeology. I think it's still a virgin ground for to discover more. I mean, this is my personal
I can give you an example. There's a INALCO. It's a French institute in France in Paris, who is specialized in all literature, linguistic, and anthropologic side. So, you know, the Amazigh society. They can also guide people who want to make research. But according to you, just following what you say to complete, uh, until now, there are some researchers, some teachers in the universities who are linking the Egyptian civilization to the west of Egypt, because until the last 10 years, the Egyptology are linked only with the Middle East. That means only with the Arab, Sumerian, and Semitic fact, you know.
Yeah.
If we speak about language, we will talk about Copt language, Hebrew, Arabic, Aramean, Sumerian, Akkadian, all with these languages, but they forgot this west side, and they are connected.
Yeah.
Even on the geography, even in the culture. If we go to the names of some pharaohs family, Yupeth, some researchers they say that it means Yufut. Yufut, that means the better than. Yifith.
Yeah.
Yufut. Tapsut. C'est Tafsut. There is some names like that, which is taken from, they have only one link explanation in Amazigh language of the west of Egypt, and they have no explanation with the west, with the east.
Yeah.
So, like you said, the field is still virgin, and they can go and research, and I'm sure that they can be helped. There is also, I think in California, there is a lady, Ellen, I have forgotten, I can give you the name later, but it's she's a researcher, American researcher, who researched on all these fact literature, poetry, and traditions of the Morocco in Tash el-Hith. So this field must be approached, if you want.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, if it's like without like raising this awareness and trying to dig further, I mean, I think anyone could help taking that path and research more and see and learn more about our ancestry. And as you said, it's so like rich, and it's worth to be like fought for, and like to keep it and in the best way. And after all, like we are only one race, human race, and we are somehow connected. Like, and this is the beauty. Yeah. Yeah. So I am gonna read some of the questions and what people wrote. Rita said, "We did not write history, so whoever wrote it presents his or her own side." So that's. I think she said it at some point where you were explaining about. Yeah. So I don't know if you need to say something about it, or we go to the next one.
Go to the next one. I didn't copy the question.
It's not a question, it's just an opinion of hers. She
Okay.
said, yeah, history, we did not write history, which is right. So whoever wrote it presents his or her own side or opinion. Yeah, which is true. History has always two sides, at least, if not three or four. So it's true. I mean, it's always
The
worth
history,
investigating.
the history is written by the winners.
That's
That's
another thing. Yeah, that's true.
that's why we have to do. I am very pleased to find, or to when I hear someone did something, wrote something, or made a research on Amazigh event, because that event speaks to me. That I am proud of, and we have to take care of our facts.
Yeah.
No one can come and just to defend, or to write on our side, on our carnivals traditions, because they know them as stranger. But we, but I'm speaking about Amazigh people. When we talk about or we write about our traditions or languages, we speak from inside.
Yeah.
So we are more closer than someone who is stranger. Even they know language, even they are high graduated.
Yeah. That's true. And Samia said, that's so cute. She said, I just found an Amazigh teacher. So you have a student in queue. That's really good. And Warida said, يعطيك الصحة. Allah يبارك.
And he's in the audience.
Okay. So I hope he knows, I mean, he recognizes himself.
Yes, I hope so too.
That's great. Yeah, I agree, Sam. Yeah, he is amazing. Bilady Nasser said, thank you, Mr. Nasser. Rida said, Tenmirth. Nadira said, Tenmirth, bravo. Rida said, it could be because they were all inspired by nature. What do you think? At what point, Rida, you said that? It was 12:38, probably when he was in the middle of the if you want to repeat your question or read in vivo and mute yourself. This is a question you expect an answer for, unless I don't know if Rida is still with us. I don't think so. I agree. Does Mr. Nassel still teach Berber Amazigh language? I think you have potential students here. So too, I think they are
I'm surprised.
looking to learn. Nice. Okay,
Oh,
so
the first I started to teach when I was in university in Tizi Ouzou. I was teaching our fellows after five when I was a student. And after that, when I came to Canada, before that, I started to write for myself and for people. And when I came in Canada, I have found an association in which I started to activate like anyone for our events, feast, Yennayer, and other big moment of the community. And in 2009, we have created an association that becomes a school now to teach our teenagers and the adults our grammar and languages. And most of the father of the parents say that they want their children to speak and to understand what the grandparents say. So we went to the not academic approach through the grammar and linguistic and everything. So we went through the conversation like we teach in Algeria English or German or Russian. So it comes by the conversations and the explanation why we do what we do, why we say this, and how to say that one. This is a conversation approach, and we opt for that for the children. For the adults, because they know speak Kabyle, uh, they know they master the languages and all the fact of the language of the thinking. So they need only grammar. So I teach them the grammar. I teach them the how to write, how to read, and even the phrases, how to put a sentence, how to make a complex sentence, because we can do this complex sentence in Kabyle or in Amazigh in general, in all the areas, Shawim, Kabyle, Warsnis, Mzab, Tuareg. I found the same thing. There are similarities, 90% of similarities in the words, the thinking of the sentence, and even the construction of the sentence. And that's and I 15 years 40 years there. I was proud to find at the end that the adults start to write their short stories, and sometimes they write me in Amazigh through the SMS or when we speak. The that's a good. It's important for me. It's important to teach our language, and I'm proud of our language. I have taught some fellows the Mzab because I speak Mzab. I speak a little bit Shawi. I understand Tuareg, and this is all the same linguistics. The difference is sometimes the accent, like in the States. Someone from New York, when he speaks American, it looks like different from the Texan one. Why? Because of the area, because of history, because of many paralinguistics facts. That's what, and we have the same thing, even in Tizi Ouzou, or in Algeria. We cannot say this. We understand it's the same between Kabyle and Shawi, but it's not the same. It's different in the accent. That's all. But I speak all these dialects because it's easier for me. It's the same grammar. Well, sorry if I was longer.
No, thank you. It's never too long. I mean, whatever you say makes sense, and for sure it gives us more knowledge. And thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I'm glad we recorded it because we want to benefit the maximum of people. We're gonna share it on our Facebook platform and I think Instagram. And thank you so much. Everyone is thanking you. So, Rida, you said to the Mayan and Berbers when you wanted to compare Berbers and Mayans. I didn't. I don't know
I
if
didn't understand
no.
what you said.
I don't think it's a question. Maybe it's a comment where while you were talking. I believe. I think. And Zuwina said, "Nice to know. Thank you for you both. Tenmir, Tenmir. Thank you so much. يعطيك الصحة Nasser. It was un vrai plaisir de vous avoir. Oh, thanks for your time. I'm sure the whole community will benefit. Inshallah, we never know. Maybe we will meet you in person here in California, and we will have longer
Inshallah.
discussions. So I'm sure it's always a pleasure to talk with you and learn from you. يعطيك الصحة.
Thank you.
Ask the same guest.
I hope that I wasn't so heavy because I talked too much.
No, you did great, and we thank you so much for the effort of doing it in English for us. We really take it to heart, and we appreciate a lot because you.
I'm sorry for my English because it's not my first, not the second, not the third
I'm an
language.
English learner myself. I cannot all I can say, it was great. I was able to understand it, and that's the most important thing. And I'm sure we can ask the American born Belaidi. I'm sure he understood those people, the people who could have probably could uh, how do I say it? Assess your English, not me. To me, you were perfect because
Thank you very much.
it was
Thank you
great.
very much.
Great. تاني ميرثي. We hope to see you in other presentations. Have a nice rest of the day and happy New Year again. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being in the Zoom, and we hope to see you again in other presentations. And thanks for staying till the end. As Gosem guest from Hawa organization, and we hope to see you in other events. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Okay. إلى اللقاء.
d'accord.